Back. Really excited for today's presenter. Hi, Scott. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's good to see you guys.
Great to see you. Last time I saw you, it was in person.
It's true. Don't we miss those in-person things?
We do.
Yeah.
The hugging shortage is beginning to become a problem for me.
I understand.
All right. We're going to give it a couple minutes and then we'll sort of get kicked off.
Cool.
All right. Where are you today, Scott?
I'm in Newport today. So
Yeah.
I go back and forth between LA with Sita and then here in Newport Beach. My kids are down here. And
Awesome.
so I'm sitting right across the street from Balboa Island right now. And yeah, it's gorgeous out. We got Santa Ana's here in Southern California, so it's getting hot.
All right. Yep. I'm sure it is.
And where are you?
I am in the Berkshires today.
Cool.
In Western Massachusetts, yes. Where it is
Nice.
also starting to become summer-like, and some of the life restrictions are easing up.
Thank goodness.
I agree.
Thank goodness. If
All
there's
right,
one thing that we
go ahead.
I was just going to say, if there's one thing that we hope for right now, it's that these restrictions come to an end so that we can all get back to doing business the way we're used to doing business.
Yes, or in some reinvented format, right?
Right.
All right, well, let's get kicked off. Welcome to all the participants today on today's call. I'm Joanna Roach. I'm the Executive Director of GSN Planet. I'm really happy to be here. Megan is in the control room today, monitoring all of the activities and making sure this all goes smoothly. She is a very well-seasoned professional now. I think this is what, I don't know, 20th webinar. We're on a roll though, so we're going to keep it going. And today it is really our really great pleasure to have with us Scott Duffy, who is a very good friend of GSN and who has been a serial entrepreneur in his career, spent a lot of time in the travel space, sold one of his companies to Richard Branson of Virgin, and he now hosts a show called What Now with Scott Duffy. So he's going to talk to us a little bit today about business and business resiliency, and I think really be able to share some good advice for us as we kind of go back out into the world and look at how we're going to behave and interact after the coronavirus. So welcome, Scott.
Well, thank you. It's so great to be here. I always love doing anything that I can to support and be around the GSN tribe. So thanks so much for having me today. You know, it's been such a crazy time. I was sharing with you earlier how, I spend most of my time up in Los Angeles, and starting the year with the death of Kobe Bryant and the way that impacted the city and sports fans, and then shifting from Kobe to COVID to stay at home. And now we have the protests and everything else, that's going on outside. It has been such a crazy, first half of the year. And, it's been tough. And I think it's left people asking themselves, two questions. What now? What do I do now to really pivot, adapt, and come out of this crisis, even stronger? And, it's had a heck of an impact, not just on people in the travel industry, but people in my space as well. I had a live event business that was really thriving. And, when live events were canceled all across the country and we couldn't hold them, we all were forced to pivot and adapt also. But I think really where I want to start today is I just want to share a little bit about my background and what happened to me in 2008 and what it took for me to really pivot and to adapt and come out stronger. And I think that part of what I learned is really instructive for people today. And then what I'd love to do is kind of share 3 ideas that I see people in the travel industry doing and in the spa industry doing to really, I think, position themselves to either get back on their feet or take what they have and really, like I said, grow it and build it into something even bigger as we work through this crisis. So just a little bit about me. I'm a Southern California guy. I grew up in Los Angeles. I went to school in San Diego. When I was a junior in college, I was on a fraternity trip down in Mexico and got in this crazy car crash. And it left me with 2 brain hemorrhages. I had to drop out of school to recover. Didn't think I was going to get better. And while I was recovering, I picked up this habit. My roommate came in one day and he handed me a motivational book on tape. And he said, "My dad thinks you should listen to this." And before you knew it, I had picked up this habit and I started to build a library. And it was people at that time like Jim Rohn and Dennis Waitley and Les Brown and a new guy coming on named Tony Robbins. And as I got better and I felt stronger, I decided I wanted to go back to college and finish and work with any one of them as an entrepreneur or as an intern. And the first person I applied to intern for was Tony Robbins. But instead of that internship, he gave me a job. So I first started working kind of in this training business when I was 20. He was 30. It was a long time ago. And eventually I worked myself out of training into technology. And I was really early in consumer internet. And here's why this is important. I was on the ground floor, one of the first couple of people, at a series of companies that ended up becoming these big brands. So today's CBSSports.com and NBC Internet, FoxSports.com. And then I sold this company to Virgin and I ran it for Branson. And it was in the private jet space. Now, the reason I'm telling you all this is because to me, it felt like I was totally living like this dream. I was really like living the time of my life. I was working with my hero entrepreneur. And then came 2008 and the market crashed. And what happened to me was I lost everything. I went $400,000 in debt, had a first daughter, pregnant with a second daughter. I lost the business. Like I lost everything. The whole thing happened in like 9 months. And it was crazy. And back then, I really didn't know what to do. And for me personally, I was in a position where I had a whole bunch of emotions that were running through me. I was really embarrassed about what happened. I didn't want to share with people what happened. I was always trying to put on a brave face. I didn't ask anybody for help. I really didn't even know where to go for help. And so for me, I think I did what I think any good entrepreneur would do, which was like curl up in the fetal position in the corner of my room and just try and get through it. And I really struggled. And one of the reasons I really struggled is that I think that as we get older, and particularly if we're doing well at something, if we've done well in the business, we've done things in a certain way, or we have a product or service that, is really kind of kicking butt, what happens when things change is we tend to stop learning. And instead what we do is we go back to doing the same things that worked for us before, but we do them more and harder, more and harder, more and harder. And that's what I did. And as a result, what happened was I kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper into a hole. And then one day kind of I hit, which was, I guess at that time, what I thought was like the worst day, probably the worst day in my life. And I just could not figure out how to get out. And I'm like 5 years into this. And I'm looking around and I pulled over in a parking lot in an area called Costa Mesa in Orange County. And I couldn't keep it together. And I called one of my best friends, Dave Meltzer, and I said, I do not know what to do. I have got some of the best mentors out there working, that I worked with. And they're all telling me I'm doing the right things in business to turn around, but nothing's getting better. And here's what he said. He said, starting today, we're going to stop working on your business and we're going to start working on your head. And for me, that was the day that life changed. And I bring this up because today there's so much that's going on outside of us that we can't control, but there are two things that we can control: what we focus on and really how we take care of ourselves and how we move. And so focus is so important. And what Dave said to me is he said, Scott, starting today, there's 4 things that we're going to do. And I'm going to talk about travel and business in just a little bit, but I think this is important. He said, there's 4 things that we're going to do. He said, the first is this: starting today, you're going to be accountable for everything that's going on outside of you or everything that's going on to you. And so what he told me is he said, Scott, starting today, it was no longer the market. It was no longer your investors. It was no longer your customers, no longer any of that. It's you. You're going to be fully accountable. He said, number 2, you are going to forgive yourself for everything. And by the way, for me, that was the hardest part. Number 3, he said, I'm going to work with you to find the lesson in all of it because we're going to need that to build on to move forward. And number 4, he said, we're going to be grateful for it. you're going to be grateful for it. And I'm like, how in the hell am I going to be grateful for this? And here's what he told me. He said, I want you to create a gratitude alarm. I've had this on my phone for years now. By the way, if you're with me at GSN, it's 7:30 in the morning or 7:30 at night, and you hear it go off, you get sucked into this. So what I do twice a day is when that alarm goes off, I say out loud, I say thank you, and 3 things that I'm thankful for. And at first, for me, that was something that was pretty tough to do. And it was something I thought was kind of silly or whatever. But here's what it is. Gratitude, it changes everything because it shifts your perspective and it gets you to focus on what you do have versus what you don't have. And so if you do that for 3 times a day, every single day of the week, what will happen is you're going to start to develop momentum. And what I've learned about going through difficult times, challenging times, is the momentum of feeling good and empowered is something that really helps us to break through. And so again, I started with once a day, did it for 30 days. Now I do it morning and night. And if you want extra credit for it, here's something that I highly recommend. And this is what I do now. In the morning, the routine's a little different. In the morning, I say 3 things that I'm grateful for. So I start with 3 things that I'm grateful for. The second is I say 3 things I love about myself. For me, that was a radical shift. And it came because I was talking to Sita Thompson, Sita Couture, who introduced me to GSN. And one day she was with me and she said, oh my gosh, it's amazing the way you love your kids. She said, it's like you give them everything you've got. It's like all the love in the world. And she said, it's really cool the way when you're with them, it doesn't matter what they do. There's no judgment and you're there for them. And she said, what would happen in your life if you turn that love on yourself and you gave yourself that same love? And for me, it was a radical shift in thinking. And so I started to do this exercise and it created momentum. And then finally, every day, I say 3 things in the morning that I forgive myself for. And sometimes they're really small little things, but you know what? They add up. And this develops momentum. And I believe that, I call it the momentum cycle. I believe that there's an exponential factor in terms of our results and success that takes place in the universe. And what I mean by that is this. Let's say I want to lose weight. Let's say I want to lose 10 pounds and that's it. And I give myself a month. Well, here's what happens. Let's say I do the right things on the first day. I get the power of doing that in that momentum to the first power. I do it 2 days in a row to the second, 3 days in a row to the third. There's an exponential increase in terms of this momentum that I have. And then on Sunday, what happens is I completely blow the diet. The next day, I have to start over again. And so I get the power to the first and then the second. So here's what happens. At the end of the month, you have 2 people standing next to each other. And one person lost 10 pounds and the other person lost 2. What's the difference? The person that lost 10 pounds did that thing every single day and had the exponential power of the universe conspiring on their behalf, right? To this exponential power. What we need that same kind of momentum, right? In our own lives in terms of how we think and what we focus on. So again, what I learned for me when going through a difficult time was the place to start was gratitude. And then showing that love to myself and then forgiving myself for things. And that, again, is what, for me, really helped to turn things around. And the crazy thing is it started with my head. It didn't start by focusing on the business stuff. And that was the big shift. Now, as it relates to the business stuff, right, these are super crazy times. And I look at the travel industry and, travel, I believe, is still the largest employer in the world. The last report that I read showed that there was something like 80 to 90 million people globally that were impacted by unemployment or furloughs in the travel industry as it related to COVID. And so we've all been, really heavily impacted. And I look at hotels, and we'll talk about that in a second, hotels and spas. But what I tend to go to is I tend to go to airlines because when I was working with Richard and with Virgin, I had a software company, and it was like Expedia, but it was for private jets. So I was kind of in the private jet business, and Virgin had 5 airlines at the time, And so I spent a lot of my time with the people that ran those. And it's interesting. If you take a look at how the airline industry was impacted when the market crashed in 2008 and 9 here in LA. In LA, passenger traffic at LAX was down 30% in 2008, 2009, 30%. It took 10 years to recover that 30%. Now, in the last 2 months, passenger traffic at LAX has been down 98%, which is crazy when you think about the impact that that's going to have and how long it will take to recover. But what I do know is this. What I do know is that after the market crashed in 08, 09, and we saw that big impact on air travel, eventually what happened was that industry adapted, it iterated, it found new ways of making money and generating revenue, and ultimately it came out stronger and bigger than it ever was. And I'm really confident that the same thing is going to happen again today. The thing is, I think for all of us, there's really three things that we need to do in order to get through this crisis even stronger. And it doesn't matter if we're in the hotel business or spa business, in the airline business, anywhere in travel. And the first is, as it relates kind of, again, to our pivot forward, is number one, we've got to effectively learn how to pivot and adapt. To effectively learn how to pivot and adapt. And here's what I mean. The products, and you all know this, the products and services that worked for us 12 weeks ago may not be the products and services that work for us going forward. Now, the biggest mistake that people make during these corrections is, again, they go back to the same things that worked in the past. Two questions that you need to be asking all of your customers, your clients, and your prospects. And the first is this. What is most important to you now? What's most important to you now? And by the way, and you got to keep going. Most people stop at that. And the second question is, what has to happen, or how do you know that you're getting what you want? Okay, let me give you an example. Let's say I want to create like a fitness business. I want to create a fitness tool. And I go to somebody and I say, hey, I'm creating a fitness tool. What's most important to you about a fitness thing, a fitness program? What the person says is something like that it's easy to use. Now, here's the thing. Easy to use means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but that's where most stop. So the most important thing you have to ask at that point is, well, what has to happen? How do you know that it's easy to use? Super important. And what's going to happen is that client or customer or prospect is going to start to give you their buyer blueprint. They're going to start to go through a list of the things that really have become their buying criteria. And then what you do is this, is you take them through that buyer blueprint, you repeat back to them what it is that they said. So for example, the person may say, easy to use to me means that it's something that I can access on a mobile device. I want to get it on an iPhone. I don't use an Android. I don't want it to be a monthly subscription. I want to buy it once because I don't know what the economy is going to look like next week. I want it to integrate with Apple Health. And they go on and on and on. And you see, here's what happens. They're telling you their recipe, exactly what it is that they want to buy from you. Again, most people start at what's most important. They don't ask what has to happen or how do you know. Now, after a person has exhausted all the things that they think are important for them to buy, what you do is you repeat the list back. And if they say that's it, you ask them, hey, is there anything else? Is there anything else? And they say, I don't know. I don't think so. As soon as they do, this is the gold. You say, I know you don't know, but if you did, what would it be? Those last couple things, they always end up being like the pixie dust that helps to lead to a sale. So what happens is when we're going through change and transition, so often we sit behind a desk, talk to our colleagues in the same industry, and we spend our time trying to think up what people want and how they want it. Instead, go ask those two questions. Super important. And it leads me to this idea of Shoshin. So I would consider myself Buddhist, and there's a term that we use called Shoshin, which means beginner's mind. I once heard Phil Jackson, the iconic coach of the Chicago Bulls and the LA Lakers, the only coach to coach Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. And he was asked, what is it? What is the difference that makes the difference? The one thing that makes those two guys so much better than number two in the league. And his answer was Shoshin. He said every single day, what's different about those two guys is from the moment they step on the court, they approach the day as if it's the first day they've ever played basketball. They are so completely open to all possibilities. They're so completely open to change. And that's the space that we need to be in now. So when we're asking people, what's most important to you now? What has to happen? How do you know you're getting what you want? We have to be open to what it is that we hear. We really have to allow ourselves to receive that. So again, I think those are the keys to pivoting and adapting. The second thing that's going to be really important is to completely rethink your customer journey. Completely rethink customer journey and how it may change at each inflection point. So here's what I mean. I'm going to use, because I have a background in aviation, I'm going to use aviation as an example and think about kind of how I'm going about this process as it would relate to your business. And by the way, the best place for you to get inspiration for your industry or for your product or what you're doing right now is not in your industry. The last place to go is in your industry. The best thing to do is just surround yourself with people that come from different spaces, because that's where the inspiration and the non-groupthink is going to come from. That's how you ideate and that's how you innovate in your business going forward. So as it relates to rethinking the customer journey, if you'll allow me, I want to go through a customer journey in commercial air travel. And again, just think about the touch points and then think about this as it relates to your business. So as an example, let's say I'm in LA and I want to fly out of LAX. I wouldn't drive. I would probably call an Uber. Okay. So I've called Uber on my app. What's the next thing that happens? Uber arrives, I get in the car. What is it that I need now? So we're in a COVID world. What do I need? Do I want to grab the water bottle that I used to get before? Or is that something I don't want to touch? Would I prefer to see that there's a mask there for me, maybe in like a clean, like one-off like package? Would I want hand sanitizer? Is there a certain way I'd want to charge my phone that's different than before as a result of COVID? How does being inside of the Uber change as a COVID era customer? Now I get to the airport. Now, once I get to the airport, things are going to be different. When I go to check in, okay, there's going to be a whole bunch of changes. First of all, it's highly unlikely in a year that when you get on a plane, you're going to be able to take more than one bag. Right now, you have your roller bag. You have a second bag that goes under the seat. You might grab something else and try and sneak it on. The airlines, I've been talking to the CEOs, the airlines want as little baggage in that plane as they possibly can, because they don't want you, they want to have as little risk as possible of you bringing something onto the plane. So if that's the case and now you have to check more, let's talk about that process. Like, do you want to send your bags early? For me, that's always been a clunky process, but is there an opportunity for innovation in this? I'm actually going to check my luggage in. Think about the lines that's going to create. What's the innovation that makes that process easier? Think about all the people that go and their bags are too heavy and things like that, and they start to open their luggage. Is there a way to weigh your bags before you get to the front? Is there a way, like, what are all of these processes and what they look like? Now you actually get inside. So you've checked your bags and you get inside. I don't want to touch the kiosk anymore. I'm afraid to touch the kiosk. So how do you create a process that is a completely, totally touchless process for being able to use a kiosk and get a ticket? And do you get a physical paper ticket anymore? Or is there a different way that transfers to your phone? And if the Wi-Fi isn't any good, what's the innovation that helps that process to happen? Do you somehow touch your phone or get it close to the kiosk? And now so all of these things are being worked on. Now, and again, think about this as it relates to your business. So now, okay, I've checked in. I'm on my way to security. I get to security. What does that look like? Well, I'm a TSA member, so I can go through my TSA line. There's a clear check line over here. Well, it's highly likely that what's going to happen is at some point, we're going to have things installed like they're doing in China now. So you don't just go through a gate in order to see if you have like a bomb on you. You actually go through a gate that's going to sense right away if you have a fever. So if that's the case, is there an opportunity for an upsell with TSA or Clear? Or is there a new company that's going to evolve that does all the health screening? And if somebody doesn't pass, puts them in some type of quarantine and takes care of that. Now you get to the point where you're putting your bags through the thing. Do I want to touch all those bins, or is there another process? And then finally we get to the cockpit. Now that we're checking in, or to the plane, now that we're checking in, does the agent want to touch your ticket or touch your phone, or is there a new process that we create? Maybe it's an eye or a facial recognition. Now, once we get on the plane, all kinds of change. So inside the plane, they're going to start to spray. They've already started to test, like they do in hospital rooms. They're going to clean the planes with an infrared type of light. We need to create mobile units for that. They don't exist yet. And there's going to be a wipe down that happens for all the seats. The seat back pocket is going to be sewn up. You're not going to be able to use it anymore. The reason, that's where all the infection is on a plane. It is the dirtiest part of every plane, because that's where people blow their nose and put their stuff inside the seat back pocket. So is there an opportunity to innovate there? Is there an opportunity, for example, to create something? Maybe it's the pillow person or the neck pillow person, where you put something over the seat that's in front of you, and now you have your own pockets that you can take everywhere that you go. My point is this: at every single touch point of the customer journey, there's room for change and there's room for innovation. And it happens in every industry. And the odds are, if you talk to somebody in your business or your industry, they won't be able to see it because they're so stuck to the way that they've done business. Not because they're trying to be difficult, it's because they don't have a different frame of reference. So what's really important is to create new frames. And the way we create new frames is look at metaphors from different places and different industries, if that makes sense. And so rethinking the customer journey is going to be important. And I'll tell you, as it relates to hotels and spas, I was just talking to my friend Jeff Hoffman, who is the founder of Priceline.com. And I asked him, I said, what do you think, if there's one thing that you think is going to be different, one change that you think is going to happen in the hotel and the spa business over the next 2-3 years, what is it? And what he said was a couple things. The first is, he said, obviously, this is going to become a hyper-local business, a hyper-local business. For the next 2 or 3 years, a lot of people's travel is going to be limited to places they can drive. So we've seen Airstream, we've seen RV sales go through the roof in the last 6 weeks. It's incredible, the growth. It's all about being local. But what Jeff said to me is, it's not just about traveling locally. He said what he believes will happen is hotels and spas are going to become local area experts of providing certain standards of cleanliness and safety. And so he said what that meant to him, I said, what does that mean? He said what that meant to him was, if I'm going to go to a city I don't know, he said, let's say I'm going to go to San Diego, in his example, and I'm trying to decide what hotel to stay at. He said, I'm going to be more comfortable if a hotel gives me the safest restaurants to go to, the safest gyms to go to, the safest place to get a massage, gives me all of that information that somehow is like certified by their team, which, by the way, is an opportunity for an entrepreneur to create some kind of certification, local certification program for a big branded kind of chain. So I thought that was really interesting. The local travel, and also becoming the expert on businesses in your area and really becoming a recommendation engine for the people who are your customers. One of the things that he and I also talked about was converting rooms and converting space into temporary office space for people that were traveling as well. And he was starting to hear more and more hotels across the country beginning to think along those lines. So I thought that was interesting. The third thing, on top of pivoting and adapting and rethinking the customer journey, that I stay focused on is really, how do you stay relevant today? How do you stay relevant today? This is incredibly important because I have so many friends, and I'm sure you do too, in the travel industry, in the spa industry, that have been let go or they've been furloughed. So they're not at work and they're not connecting with people every day. Here's the thing I want you to remember. The moment you stop adding value to your network, you get replaced. The second you stop adding value to your network, you get replaced. So even if you're not at work today, you have to be as if you're at work today. You need to get on the phone and reach out to your clients and your customers and your prospects. Be sure to be involved in communities that are a part of online. If you're invited to something from somebody, make sure you're the first person to show up. The moment we stop adding value to our network, we get replaced. Also remember that impression matters. Impression really matters. So I run an event. I do it a couple times a year. I have about 25 people that come. And what I do on the first day is most of these people have never met each other. And when they show up in the first morning, I have a buffet like set up, like a continental breakfast. So they all grab some food and they start talking to each other and they start to get to know each other. And then after a little bit, what I do is I open the doors to the main room and I invite everybody in. And when they walk in, they see 3 tables set up in like a U shape. So everyone can see each other, right? And look at each other. And when they sit down at the table, in front of every chair, there's a placard and I ask them to write their name on it. And next to the placard, there's a stack of note cards. There's 1 note card for every person in the group. And here's what I do. Now, they've known these people for like 15, 20 minutes. I say, I want you to go around, take 1 note card, write 1 person's name on it, and write the first 5 words that come to your mind when you think of that person. And then what I do is I collect all of them. So you write 1 for every person. I collect all of them. And then my team will take each person and write all of the feedback that people gave. And here's what happens. Like the results are always like amazing because 90% of the time, people have a complete disconnect between the impression they think that they're giving to their customers and what they're actually giving to their customers. So for example, somebody who might be really outgoing and really friendly may be seen as obnoxious. Or somebody who maybe is a little bit more reserved may be viewed as somebody that is more standoffish. And so the question I always ask people, and the question I'm really asking during this time, is the impression that you're giving people now what you need in order to get to where you want to go. What I've noticed is over the past 4 weeks in particular, people have gotten really lazy. They've gotten really lazy about showing up. Maybe they're burned out. They've gotten really lazy about dressing up and showing up. And they've got really lazy about how they present themselves, like if they're on a Zoom call. If there's a bunch of people on the call and you're the one that looks like you didn't get ready for it, right? You're the one that looks like you're falling asleep during it. Think about the impression that that's leaving on people. There has never been an easier time to stand out digitally than now. There's never been an easier time to stand out in your industry than now. Because all you have to do is I'm serious, just do one thing every day. You take a look at that one thing over a day, a week, a month, a year. We talked about the exponential kind of factor of momentum that happens in the universe. And so again, I always ask, how are you showing up? Is the impression that you're giving the one that you think you are and what you need in order to move forward? And then I always ask people, what is kind of the value ratio of what you're giving and receiving in every conversation? So here's the way I think about it. If you gave me $20 and I give you $100 bill back, would you do that deal? Well, the odds are you do that every day. You know, you give me 20, I give you 100 back. That's the way I think about everything that I do. That's the energy exchange that I want in everything that I do. What happens, and again, I'm not pointing fingers. I've gone through this hard transition myself. You know, I shared with you earlier, I went from having so much and making millions of dollars to losing everything, $400,000 in debt. I was totally lost for a long time. It took me a long time to turn it around. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but I know that what happens is when people are in transition, what happens is we tend to get really focused on selling and we get on our toes selling and as opposed to just serving people, we're selling them. And so in order for you to successfully have that kind of 20-100 value exchange, it's really important that you're constantly asking people, what do you need? What do you need now? And what has to happen? How do you know that you're getting that thing that I'm a resourceful person, that you're getting what you want? Now, if you're somebody that needs to generate some cash quickly, you can use those questions to your advantage also. The way you do it is put together a list of people that you think they're in a business that's doing well, or they have financial resources, and go to them and ask, hey, look, what do you need? I'm resourceful. What do you need? And what would you be willing to pay if I can do that for you, or I can find somebody to do it? Because here's what I know about people. People that are successful and people that have money always know what they need, and they're always willing to pay for it. And so all we have to do, like, we don't even have to think if we need cash right now. We don't have to think about building or creating something. All we have to do is just go ask people what they need and what problems they have, and just go solve those things. It's that simple. And so, again, when I take a look at today, and we're all in this mode where we're pivoting and adapting to what's going on, three things: pivoting, adapting, approaching every single day with a beginner's mind. Remember that idea of Shoshin. When you walk out into the court, it's like the first day you've ever played the game, right? Let go of the things. Remember this: the things that worked for you 12 weeks ago, okay? The things that worked for you, that superhero power that you had, that one thing you could always go back to, that product, that skill set that you had 12 weeks ago is your baggage today. That's the way I want you to think about it. I want you to think about having a complete beginner's mind, being open to everything and all possibility, and being willing to adapt. Rethink your customer journey and focus on ways to stay relevant. Because the moment you stop contributing value to your network, you will get replaced. I think if you do those three things, it will help you to position as we go into the second half of the year. Joanne.
Wow. Wow, that was really a great talk. Thank you, Scott. That was amazing. Amazing. We have one question that I want to ask. Someone's talking about, how long do you think that COVID is going to be around for, and which, in terms of what will happen, will it be an innovation or will it be a vaccine? Like, what is based on what you just said, that's a good question, or interesting.
Yeah. So I guess I'll give the politically correct and the non-politically correct answer. So I look at COVID cases and I know that they're real. I know some people that I'm very close with, they got it and got terribly sick, were hospitalized, were at the edge of death, all that kind of stuff. I'm here in California. If you took 10,000 M&Ms and you put them in your room and you took away one M&M, that's how many people equivalently have died in the state of California. It's a really confusing conversation for me about kind of but what is going to happen? The best thing that can happen is that stay-at-home restrictions get lifted everywhere, and that we're able to open back stores and not limit the number of people that can come inside. I mean, this is really what I'm hoping for, because I look at my friends that own restaurants, and if they can only be at 50% capacity, they can't pay their rent. Right. If I look at, a Guitar Center last weekend, and when I was at Guitar Center, they only let the Sunset Boulevard Hollywood Guitar Center is like a Target. They only let 10 people in at one time. By the way, when it comes to thinking about your customer journey, I want you to remember this because it is so important. Think about the crappy experience you have to put your customer through now. If you're in a business that's being heavily required to social distance, okay, like that Guitar Center, think about that experience, and then think about your customer journey and how you can innovate on it in order to create a raving fan. Let me give you the example. So I do a lot of broadcasting, and because I do a lot of broadcasting and radio and stuff like that, I need certain equipment. And the problem is most of the equipment that I've needed in the past 3 months has been out of stock at Amazon, and I can't go to the store and it's out of stock there anyway. So last weekend, Guitar Center opened in Los Angeles, and I was like, yes, I'm going to be the first person there. Let me tell you what happened.
Like a concert, you're going to camp out.
I was ready to camp out. So I get there. First of all, I looked on Google. Again, this is all really instructive stuff, right? I looked on Google and it said that the store was open, but it wasn't open yet. They hadn't changed their time, their listing. Okay. Then I get to the store and so I find out that it's not open because I'm there. They weren't answering the phone. And what would happen was it would go in a loop and then you get in an answering machine and you'd be dumped into an answering machine. So I got no valuable information. It would have taken somebody 5 minutes to update the Google listing and 5 minutes to update the answering machine with the right answers. Then we get there and I find out that there's only 10 people allowed in the store. So there was a line, and the line, we all had to stand 6 feet apart, and it was like 85 degrees on black asphalt, just like, and really, like it was a really hot day. And I waited for 45 minutes. Sita went and she grabbed food and she came back. Waited for 45 minutes in order to get there before leaving. So here's the thing. Think about that customer experience. Now think about this. I'm at freaking Guitar Center. Have somebody play a guitar outside while I'm waiting. That would have been so cool. Or have somebody come and put up some kind of overhang or tenting in order to make it cooler. Or just have like a jug of water or whatever it is. Think about your customer journey, because what I did is I walked right across the street to Sam Ash, their biggest competitor in Los Angeles, and it was a completely different experience. So how can you think about how hard it may be for somebody to order your product now. Think about how hard it may be for somebody to come to a hotel or to a spa and to have the experience that they're used to expecting. Figure out as you do the customer journey, what's the gap between what they always got here and where we are now. And think about how you can fill the gap with new experiences that make them raving fans. Because I just call it the Guitar Center problem now. But everyone that is in retail has the Guitar Center problem. Mm-hmm. It's just all how you approach it and how you get in front of it. You see, when times are tough, what happens, particularly when we have change that was as fast as this was, we tend to get on our heels. We get on our heels because we're asking ourselves 2 questions. What does this mean to me, and what should I do? And we're not sure what to do, and so this is where we go. There's never a more important time to get on your toes. And getting on your toes means getting clear. What do they want, and how do they want it now? What's the customer journey? How has it changed? And how can we actually make it better than anybody else in the marketplace? And how do I stay relevant until all this stuff opens up, until people can buy my product, until I can serve more? How do I stay as relevant, if not more, to all of them? And that's really the key. Those are the three things to think about.
Yep. I'm ready. I'm taking notes. Thank you. We've gotten some really great feedback here. People say, wow, I feel so re-inspired to get back on track again. COVID-19 quarantine has been a roller coaster of emotions, so positive. Love your ability to relate to our industry and provide examples that are relevant to us. That really awesome. Says quite a bit, Scott.
This is the thing. I can tell you, I got to just share one quick story.
Do it.
I can tell you that when things were tough for me after 08, 09, like I said, I had 5 really hard years. I didn't want anybody to know what I was going through. There's a fine line between putting on a brave face because we want people to have confidence in our company, or we want people to hire us or to bring us back. So I was putting on this brave face, and it wasn't really helping me at all. Later, I actually got, I had a mentor talk to me who said, gosh, if you weren't just always trying to be so positive and you would have told me what was going on, I could have jumped in and I could have probably helped you a long time ago. So I do an interview like 2 years ago. I do an interview, and we got to the end of the interview, and the person said to me, gosh, after you did the CBS Sports and NBC and you made Fox Sports this big thing.com, he said, things really took off. And that was his last question, his last comment. I said, you know what? When he finished, I go, can we go re-record that part again? I said, that's exactly what I don't want people to think. So I told a story. I don't tell this story much, but I'll tell you the story. So after the market crashed in '08, and like I said, I didn't know what to do. And I had all of that loss. And I was just like, I just didn't know where to go with it. About a year later, I got a call. I got a call from an old friend. And he said, he goes, hey, Duff. He called me Duff. Duff, he said, I hear that you're looking to run something. I said, I am. He goes, you're hired. I'm like, I'm hired? He goes, you're hired. I said, what am I going to do? And he said, what does it matter? You're looking for work. Don't overthink it. So he said, come meet me for lunch today. So I go to Pasadena and I meet him for lunch. And I sit down and I go, so what are we doing? And he said, well, I thought about it since we talked. And he said, you're no longer going to run the company. He said, you're going to be a salesman. And I said, what am I going to sell? And he said, pee. And I said, pee? What do you mean pee? He said, I just bought a lab and we specialize in processing urine. He said, so like you go to the doctor, you pee in a cup. He said, that comes to me. We spin it, we create a report, we send it back to the doctor, they give it to the patient. He said, I want you to sell pee for me. I want you to call in all the doctor's offices in Southern California and win their pee business. He said, my vision for you in 1 year is that you will be the king of pee. And that was my first job offer after being in a company with Richard Branson. Are you kidding me? And I was so mad. I was so mad. My ego was so bruised. I didn't take it. I didn't take the job. I said, how can you? What I learned is this. What I learned is I was going through how can you, how can they, all that kind of stuff. My ego was really wrapped up in it. I realized that, so a lion is the most powerful hunter in the jungle, okay? Most powerful. And what feeds the lion is its legs, its foundation. As a lion gets old, it loses the strength in its legs. And that, for a lot of lions, is what kind of leads to aging and starvation and ultimately death. The legs feed the lions. As business people, sometimes the purpose of being in business today is to be in business tomorrow. It's that simple. The purpose of being in business today is to be in business tomorrow. But what we need to do is we need to figure out how to strengthen our legs, how to build a foundation underneath our tabletop. And the foundation is some basic income that enables us to pay the rent. That it's a basic income that enables us to think about and all the stuff, the other things that we want to do. So I thought at that time that it was below me to sell pee. But what I learned, it wasn't below me and it wasn't smart of me not to take the first job or the first thing I could get in order to provide. Because providing provides the sense of stability. And the sense of stability enables us to think more clearly. And thinking more clearly enables us to sharpen our focus on. And whatever we focus on determines how we feel. And however we feel determines how we behave. And however we behave determines the results that we get. And so what I would say is if you're in a position right now where you're really struggling and you need cash, there are jobs open everywhere. And they may seem like they're below you, beneath you, sideways. Take them. I mean, I really recommend take something, get a little bit of cash in the door. It's just short term. Don't have to do it forever. And I think it will ultimately lead to more happiness.
Okay. I think that's great advice. Thank you so much. So for all of our panelists, I want to say on behalf of all of our listeners, I would like to say thank you so much for being with us. And that was really valuable wisdom that you have shared. And it's good to see you again.
It's good to see you too. I can't wait till we're all live again and we got another GSN conference.
I know. It'll be soon enough.
Good. Hey, you guys take care. By the way, if you want to reach out, you have any questions, please go to scottduffy.com, scottduffy.com. And Joanne, I'll share something with you to share with the group later that could be helpful as well. Okay.
Okay, great. Awesome.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
So much.
Bye-bye.
Yes, great.